Minimalists.
What's the best way to balance hustle and rest while growing a business? Should you hustle hard from the start so you can relax in the future? Dude, when I was reading this question, I thought it was funny. So when you're an entrepreneur, I don't think you ever relax.
No, I don't even know what that word means anymore.
Oh my
it's
God.
like an academic term.
Well, you know what's funny, man, is I was talking to Mariah about this the other day. I'm like, because I've been having such a hard time sleeping lately. I got the Oura ring, trying to track my sleep and get better sleep. And I realized there's always this constant pressure on me for us owning our own business. Now it's a pressure that I really enjoy having.
Yeah.
But as an entrepreneur, I don't think you could ever truly just sit back and relax.
I'm always jealous of the 9-to-5ers. I know that sounds weird, but I'm like, wow, so you just went home on Friday and you just didn't look at your email at all?
You just left your work.
That's amazing.
Over there. Oh wow, yeah, I totally agree.
But here's the thing: when we were in the corporate world, we weren't 9-to-5ers, although people think that.
We were more like 5 to 9ers.
Yeah, beyond 9, really. It was. So the very first thing I did in the morning was check my BlackBerry when I woke up at 4:44 every morning.
Hipster.
I would wake up, I'd write for an hour, and then I would start my day. And first thing I do though is check the BlackBerry and make sure there's no emergencies. And the last thing I did before my head hit the pillow was check the BlackBerry.
Sure.
And I was checking it every minute, it seemed like, of every day. And you know what? What do I have to show for that? Well, I developed some skills along the way, but also I was developing products and services for someone else that I wasn't necessarily benefiting directly from, right? I wasn't building up these assets. I was building up some skills for sure. Yeah. And so I had to think about it in a way where I was hustling for someone else.
Yeah.
And I, in a weird way, was being hustled.
Yeah, well, that's for sure true.
We
all were.
So if I have a pithy answer for this, it is this. Don't confuse hustle with productivity, creativity, or quality.
Amen.
And if I could have a second pithy answer, podcast Sean, for the show notes here, it's say yes until you have to say no. Then say no until you have to say yes.
Oh, that's so good.
Yeah.
No, you guys are so good at this.
So let's talk about both of those things real quick, Jordan. The first thing is, well, we often confuse hustle, the thing we talked about earlier, like I'm GTD, getting things done. But are you really getting things? Are you getting the important things done?
Right, most people aren't. And I'm just as guilty of this as anyone else. My to-do list, all right, here's the sign. If you have a to-do list and you put something on it that you've already done just so you can slide it and cross it off, you got a problem, right? You're doing the busy work. And I still sometimes catch myself doing this. I'm like, ooh, I did this thing. I better wait. Midway typing, I'm like, delete. It doesn't need to go in there. You're gamifying the system. You're using Todoist or something like that. Right. You got to be really careful with that. If you try to take these big bites. What is that book called? It's like Eat That Frog. Have you heard of this?
No.
Oh, I can't remember who wrote this. It's called Eat That Frog, and it's about doing the important things in the beginning of the day instead of like, well, first I need to make sure I have no emergencies in my inbox, and then I need to make sure that I go and buy turnips, whatever, at the store, and then I need to feed my cat, and then I'm going to make these calls, and then
busy work.
Right, it's busy work, and you throw things in the way, and this is a subconscious process where you go, I really need to do the book cover because the designer's waiting for this thing that I got to do, and it's bottlenecking this whole project. And you go, but I have all these other things to do because you don't know what you're doing. And when I teach networking and relationship development to either special forces or corporate people or whatever, they're always like, oh, it's a low priority. They don't say that, but they indicate it. And the reason is because it's a black box. It's like, I don't really know how to do this, but I do know how to tweet, and I know how to answer Instagram comments, and I do know how to craft an email for my list that doesn't need to go out, and I know how to tweak crap on my website. You push things to the bottom that are important because they're harder. And so it takes more cognitive ability to do it. So you push it to the end of the day and you go, oh, well, I don't have time, but look at all these other things I did today.
And you're depleted. You're depleted by the end of the day, so you can't even focus on the important thing. And then the saying yes, I mean, at first, especially when you're first starting a business, and that's why I phrase it this way, say yes until you have to say no. Like, you can accept all these new opportunities. It's brand new. Eventually, though, you're going to get to a point. I think Ryan and I have done 4 interviews all year this year, and we've said no to hundreds of them. Well, Sean has said no to hundreds of them.
Good job, Sean.
And the reason that we have said no is because we want to focus on what we're creating right now. There will be another time where it makes sense for us to go out like we did in 2014 and
we'll
do
have to say yes.
400
or it would
interviews.
make sense for us to say yes. We don't have to do anything, but yeah.
Yeah, exactly.
right.
When does it make sense? And so for like Tammy, when she had her question earlier, Tammy from St. Pete, yeah, she might have the opportunity right now to say yes to a bunch of clients at a lower price to build up her clientele, build up her referrals. But eventually, she's going to get so many clients, her price is going to go up, and she's going to have to start saying no, 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 until it makes sense for her to say yes to the right opportunities.
Yeah, absolutely. And the dangerous thing is that the social media, the Facebook, the emails, the phone calls, going and buying turnips, like this can feel like a hustle. And you know what? Actually, it might even, you could consider it a hustle. So
a worthless hustle.
Right. So here's my pithy answer for Nick here. An entrepreneur needn't focus on hustling as much as adding value.
Yes.
Like that's, people always ask like, oh man, I want to do this one, so I got this side hustle and I want to really break out. And you guys are entrepreneurs. Like what's your biggest piece of advice? And like our biggest piece of advice is add value. Like if you are adding value to people's lives, just like we do with 99% of our free content, people are willing to support you with that 1% of stuff that you charge for. People are going to find ways to go out of their way and support you.
Yes, indeed.
All right. Our next question is from Bob. How does one overcome the fear of insecurity of moving from the safety net of guaranteed income to the mentality that they can succeed and survive on one's own?
Well, I think we kind of alluded to this. My short answer is job security is a misnomer when your security is in someone else's hands.
Amen.
And I think quite often, like, so you're on Wall Street and you're like, well, this is job security. I've got the job that I want now. But then what happens? The stock market crashes. And all of a sudden, that security you thought you had, that's the rug has been pulled out from under you. And now you're falling because you didn't create that security. It was a sense of false security. Yeah. And the real security comes when you're willing to step back and realize I'm going to create my own security first.
Sure. I agree with this 100%. I think there is the illusion of job security in someone else's employ. And the problem that we have is entrepreneurs or business owners were like, yeah, I'm just going to jump and then hope what happens, hope it works out. That's also a bad idea. Yeah. It seems heroic now. Again, Instagram influencers and YouTubers are like, bro, go all in.
Quit your job and start a blog.
That's right. But what I would advise, because I get this question all the time on and you guys are so good at naming things. I had to name my show the Jordan Harbinger Show, which just sounds so sad now. It's just my name.
Hey, theminimalists.com was available for $7 at the time.
Wow.
So that's why we're the minimalists.
Fantastic. What I always advise is, hey, look, keep the job that you have until, and I said this earlier in the show, until you're the bottleneck.
Yeah.
And you're not the bottleneck because someone else has to do your social media. You're the bottleneck when you are the only thing stopping yourself from scaling. And you have to be brutally honest. Not just like, well, I really hate my job this last month, so maybe I'm the bottleneck now. No, it has to be you're coming home from your job, and from 7 p.m. to whenever you fall asleep at the keyboard, you're doing something only you can do. Right. That's when you make the leap.
Yeah.
And you've got income coming in, and it's pretty stable from your side hustle or whatever it is, your entrepreneurial venture. Don't quit before that. And that makes this choice so much easier. Because people, what he's asking is, when do I blindly quit something that's paying the bills and then just pray to the powers that be that my new thing starts making money? You don't. The answer is you don't do that.
Yeah, don't do that. Absolutely. So, I guess going from the art of charm to what you're doing now,
right?
Like you had mentioned at the beginning of the podcast, like you're making good money. There's this stable source of income. Is there any practical, and I got some practical stuff too, but I'm just curious, Jordan, is there any practical stuff that you did to ensure, like, you know what, I can walk away from this paycheck and I can start something else, and feel, you're always gonna have a little bit of fear, but to alleviate as much fear as possible, I guess.
What I did at first, and this was kind of an accidental discovery, what I did at first, it was like, step 1, panic. Step 2, but limit your panic to like a couple of days, depending on how traumatizing it is. Yeah. My friend Hal Elrod, who you guys might know, he's like, you can feel sorry for yourself for 15 minutes. And this is a guy who had cancer, I think, twice and almost died in a car accident. So he can speak credibly on this particular point.
Okay. Wow. I'm gonna have to look this guy up.
Yeah, he's amazing. I'll introduce you guys.
Cool.
And he wrote this book called The Miracle Morning. It's pretty interesting. What I did was, step 1, panic. Step 2, make a list of people that I know will help me. And this list could be 100 people, but what I did is I started with like 10 or 12 who I knew would not say no. And the reason I did that is because when you're feeling low, down, out, defeated, whatever it is, you don't want to call people where you're like, hey, can you help me? And they're like, oh, I'm really busy, because you'll start to feel even worse because you'll see your support network slowly slipping away.
Yeah.
Call 10 people that day or the next day and you go, look, I'm having a really big problem. Can you help me? That first dozen people that you call that help you, you start to feel bulletproof. You're like, well, if I've got 12 really good friends behind me, I'll be fine.
Wow.
And this can be your parents, but it's even better if it's not.
Right.
Because then you're like, oh, okay, it's not just my family who's like, you can do it, honey. And you're like, thanks, Mom.
You can do it, and you're handsome.
Yeah, and you're mama's handsome boy. That'll only go so far. But if you call your friends and they're like, yeah, I'm happy to figure out how to help you, that's when you start to go, wait a minute, I have a huge support network. And so what I encourage people to do, I call this exercise layoff lifelines, because it's like, imagine you get laid off. Who are the 10 or so people you wish you'd kept in touch with, like your college guidance counselor,
What a great
your old friends.
perspective, man.
Right? Like, because if you make that list now and it's like, oh, I should have kept in touch with Josh and Ryan, and I should have kept in touch with my high school guidance counselor, and I should have kept in touch with that old boss, and I should have kept in touch with these professors that were really good. Make that list now. Reach out now, because then you don't have an agenda. Because the problem is people go, oh, it's so awkward to reach out. It's awkward to reach out when you're like, hey, man, haven't talked to you in 8 years, so I need a job.
Right, so I need help now.
My house is on fire. Can you come put it out for me?
Right. That's awkward.
We're working on our second documentary right now, and on the soundtrack that we're working with Drew and Nate on from this band, there's a song called Asking on there, and the line is, it hit me. Like, and you can't listen to it yet, so there's nothing I can give for you to listen to.
It's impossible for you to hear.
But the line is, I'm sorry I didn't call. I've just been busy.
Yeah.
And but when you hear it in a song, especially, that's the thing. It's not like you're setting these people up as, I'm going to need to use you someday.
No.
You're setting it up to say, hey man, I screwed up. I didn't keep in touch with this relationship. Let me find a way to repair this. This is something that meant something to me. It doesn't mean that they're going to be your best friend forever now. It just means that you're repairing or you're reconnecting with this person so that you can have a meaningful relationship with them. If they need something, you need to be willing to help them out. This is what a relationship is. There's an us box in every relationship. I'm giving what I can give, and I'm taking what I need.
Yeah.
Not everything I can take, but taking what I need from the relationship.
Yeah, Jordan, I think I just want to highlight how, like, when you're going and asking for help, it's not even like you're looking for handouts, man.
No.
It's like when you're asking for help, you're looking for support. But I think the other thing too is like you are also offering support, and I think that is how you can really make these relationships strong. And you do have people to kind of fall back on. I mean, it's maybe Bob here doesn't have, someone who can offer him a job, but, maybe Bob has some folks who could, tell their friends and family about, what he's doing or whatever. But yeah, it's so important to hold on to those good relationships. My pithy answer would be this. It's kind of rewrote Josh's. I didn't even realize I did that. It is betting on an employer rather than yourself guarantees disappointment.
Yeah, and even though you're being employed, I really love what Jordan's saying here. It's very practical. It's not like, well, just quit your job and follow your passion.
Put yourself out there. Best dating advice ever. Just put yourself out there. Oh, that's what I've been doing wrong. I've been putting myself out there.
I haven't put myself in here. And so, I think that what's true is, yeah, okay, maybe you don't have job security, but if you're betting yourself even in the job, you're going to have better job security in that job.
Yes.
You control the mechanisms that you're able to control there.
Yeah.
Every promotion that I got in the corporate world, and I got quite a few. By age 27, I was the youngest director in our company's 140-year history.
Wow.
Which sounds really impressive until you realize that, I was the sort of middle manager of who gives a crap.
They made the director position the week before.
You're right.
All right, you're the director now.
Yeah, and the youngest
Congrats.
one. Happened to be the oldest one too. And what I realized in that scenario is I never applied for any of the promotions I got. I worked hard at adding as much value as I could so that I was the clear person to pick for the next thing. And you can do that now. You can pick yourself even if you're working within a corporate structure, you're working for a small business, or you're working for yourself. It's important to pick yourself.
Yeah, it absolutely is. I mean, Bob, you might get fired tomorrow. Your employer does not look out for you. They look out for the company.
Yeah.
And to sit there and say, oh, well, I've got this guaranteed source of income. You do not have a guaranteed source of income. You have something consistent that you've gotten maybe over the past months, years, whatever, but there's nothing guaranteed in life, especially your job. I think some practical advice, save up 6 months worth of bills. Like for me, that is what really gave me the courage to, when I got laid off. Well, the way I got laid off is it was a month before I got laid off. I asked to speak to my boss, and I'm like, hey man, you know about the Minimalists, and you know that I'm probably not going to be at this company for the rest of my life. I want to talk to you about what we're going to do, who we're going to replace me with if I happen to leave. And he was like, oh man, that's a good question. He's like, you've got things running pretty well. He's like, it's going pretty well. He's like, I don't even know if I would need to replace you. And I'm like,
bad sign.
Yeah, well, for me, it was. I just looked at him. I'm like, that's an interesting thought, isn't it? And then the next month, I get a phone call. Hey, man, I need you to meet me, in room 207 across from HR. Where like we've laid off dozens of people before. Like I knew what was coming, but having that conversation with him, and I knew I was planting the seed in his head. And having that conversation with him, I don't think I would have had that if I hadn't saved up 6 months worth of bills. It's not like, I was looking at this safety net like, oh man, I can do anything I want because I got 6 months worth of bills. But what it did do is it gave me confidence to give myself some time, a little bit of a buffer to go out there and find another source of income. So, I mean, just practically, Bob, save up 6 months worth of bills. That will alleviate a lot of fear.
Oh, yeah, good point. And it's hard to do that because people go, 6 months of bills, no problem. Then you start looking at what you're buying, and you're like, wait a minute, I probably don't even need to do that.
Yeah, you need to look at the budget and say, I'm probably spending way too much right now. If I just spent less, and I focus on what is truly essential, what is non-essential, and then what's junk in my life, I can pare down my current bills. And by the way, that 6 months, that number is going to be a lot smaller.
Right, and I'm not trying to make this sound simple. I mean, it might take someone 6 years to save up 6 months worth of bills, but that goal of having that throughout your work career, like that is, I mean, for me, like I just can't even express how much leverage that gave me when I wanted to talk to my boss about that.